In the name I am that I am, Sanat Kumara, I call forth the light of the living word, beloved Elohim, beloved Archangel, beloved mighty Choans of the rays and the lords of Karma. I call for the action of beloved Pallas Athena, beloved goddess of liberty, beloved Nada, beloved Kuan Yin, beloved Portia, beloved great divine director, beloved all-seeing eye of God, Cyclopeia. Let God's will be done, let God's will be done, let God's will be done. I demand the action of the sacred fire in this hour. Descend on mighty cosmos, secret rays. I am the holding of the balance of Lord Gautama Buddha, beloved Sanat Kumara and the seven holy Kumaras. I call upon the sacred fire, I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved mighty, I am present, come forth in this hour of the victory. Come forth in this hour of the victory of the God's flame. I demand the full power of beloved mighty, be with us this night. Beloved Jesus, send to me, Lord, my Savior, Gautama and Sanat Kumara. Come, Lord, now in the victory of the God's flame. Send the light of 10,000 suns. Beloved mighty, stand, mighty, stand, mighty, stand. Around this fortune I call upon the great single sun magnet. I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved is fair, beloved is fair, beloved is fair. I call upon the electronic and solar rings of the great central sun and direction of God. I call for the electronic solar rings. I call for the rings of the great central sun. I call for the central sun.
And with the semi-facetious invocation of Elizabeth Clare Prophet, we begin today's show. Today's show is, of course, Navigating the Astrological Matrix. I am your host, your guide, your navigator, Robert Phoenix. And I'm having an issue with chat today. So, boys and girls, if you are looking to get into the chat room, I'm probably going to address that in hour number 2, and I've got to figure out a different way to get into the chat. That's the plan here, is to open the chat room via another window, because I need an upgrade in terms of the flash on this computer that I'm on right now. So we're gonna get chat in hour number 2, and that way you can hang out, you can talk, but don't be discouraged. The show is on, and I'm going to be doing readings in the latter part of the show, in the second hour of the show. And in the first hour of the show, I'm going to have William Stickevers on. He's an astrologer from New York City. And he's calling me on chat. I can't, let me just get him. This is the wonderful thing of Blog Talk. Trying to get people onto Blog Talk via Skype sometimes is not always the easiest thing to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find William on Facebook, and we're going to line this up here and see if I can get his number. Then I can just dial him directly. It's usually the best way to do it. So let's see if we can get him on the Facebook bridge. Let's see, here we go. There's his number. So let me call William now, and let's dispense with this Skypery. And let's bring him on the show. So the next thing that you're going to hear right now is me dialing out. And that way I can bring him on. So here we go. Let's see if I can do this. Let's see what we got here. All right, hold on. It's going to take some production on my part. Here we go. Seven, okay, and let's see. All right, let's try this, boys and girls. Let's see what happens here. Dial tones, amazing. I love technology sometimes, especially when it works. Hey, William, how's it going?
Good. I had some problems getting that blog spot.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Which is why I had the foresight to get that backup number from you, because after doing this for a couple of years, you begin to envision what just might go wrong. So anyway, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I was just telling people that that normally I have a chat room open, and unfortunately for the first hour of the show, it's not happening because I'm on a different computer and there's some glitches. But in the second hour, I will have the chat room. In the second hour, I will be doing free live readings. So just hang on for that. But in the meantime, we're going to pick the brains of a very bright astrologer whom I've recently become acquainted with on Facebook, and I've been reading a lot of his predictive models. And truly, William, some of the greatest pleasure I've gotten out of your posts are your debates with Samuel, which have been really going on for like 45 comments. Samuel is a columnist for he does astrology for Ebony magazine. Is he in New York with you? Is he in your area?
Yes, he's in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm in Manhattan, New York.
Have you ever hung out with him before?
He's attended my lecture I gave in 2009 called Obamageddon, the coming economic collapse. Mm-hmm. And it was based on the premise that the progressive agenda that Obama was elected on would not be able to be implemented simply because he would be managing a country that would be in the process of a massive deleveraging. Mm-hmm. And that, I went using the Barbeau Cyclic Index and various other mundane indicators based on black box technology. I was able to demonstrate that by the time of the election season in 2012, Obama would have some serious issues to face, and it's most likely, based on my prediction at that time, that the prospects of his reelection would be solely based on the stewardship of his economy for the past 3.5 years. And that's why I felt that the 2012 election, regardless who the GOP nominee would be, would probably favor the GOP come election day.
Well, I had been forecasting that Obama would be a one-term president for a while, and in my methodology and how I arrived at that is maybe a little bit different than yours, but I think we're on the same page here. Let's talk about you for a minute before we get into some of your predictive models and some of the things that you're seeing in the world. I want to kind of go over your background a little bit. You studied computer science at Hofstra, and you've been involved in this whole concept of predictive astrology, especially as it relates to the economy, with some pretty heavyweight astrologers, people like Vera Waltz, Robert Cook, Alfie Lavoie, Robert Zoller, Christopher Warnock, a lot of folks who are engaged in both kind of right brain, left brain astrology have been your mentors. Let's talk a little bit about you, William, and how you, with such a kind of intense focus around methodology, trends, forecasting, systems, how you arrived at astrology as a practice in conjunction with some of the more technical stuff that you've been interested in throughout your life.
Well, I started off being an astrologer, doing charts by hand in the late 80s, just before Matrix, Blue Star made its, big debut, and in terms of the PC world. And I get from there, I had a very traditional practice. It was based primarily on Jungian psychology, Jungian psychological astrology. I was working with a Jungian. I started off my studies with the Jungian, and then from there, I got introduced to horror and electional through Alfie Lavoie's software, which was based on expert system modeling, where you could ask a question and it could understand the components of that question, and then based on the moment that question was entered, would then come up with an answer that was, from my experience, within the 90% of accuracy, whether the outcome would turn out to be yes or no, for instance. Mm-hmm. Then later on, I started working with Alfie Lavoie, and we started touring together and working on together black box technology, expert system modeling, where we would actually analyze like thousands of charts of married couples and find out what was consistent. And then the system would build a black box using the type of modeling that it found consistently. And then we would make projections in the probability of a newly married couple, how long that marriage would sustain. Or we would run it against time, where we would see, okay, when was the couple most likely to divorce? Or when was someone most likely to deal with some issue that required a medical procedure? And where we would run analysis after analysis, and the rules would be derived not totally on traditional systems, but based on what these expert systems were finding and building models from that. And from there, then I got into, I started also studying at the same time with Robert Zoller, using the medieval system of forecasting, and then worked later on with Christopher and Warnock on osmantic astrology based on the work based on bigotry, the medieval, the most revered medieval work in astrological magic. Then from there, I went back into the Jungian thing and decided to go further into horror. I had a very prolific horror practice. I have a practice both in Tokyo and New York, so I have an international practice at this point by 2002. And then based on reading Jeffrey Cornelius's book, The Moment of Astrology, I started learning to apply horary to mundane applications, such as what will the result of the election be? What will such and such country attack such and such country based on the current news report? Things like that, and with a high degree of accuracy, may I add. And then I began publishing these results on Facebook and on the web, on my blog. And there are some people who take great offense to some of the predictions I make because some of them are very controversial, and I have no problem being controversial as long as So in that respect, I think we're very similar, since we tend to write things that are somewhat controversial.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. It's when I look at kind of what you do and who you are, and even sort of geographically, not only where you're located, but also where you're located in the chart. You're in Aries, is that right?
Correct.
All right. So you're on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. You're in Aries. I've got a stellium in Libra. And I think it's kind of like this left brain, right brain thing we've got going on here, which is kind of fascinating. Samuel we're talking about Samuel Reynolds. He's a Scorpio, right?
Correct. He's a Scorpio.
And so I just found it fascinating in terms of sort of the tenor of your debates, because you, with your Aries, thrust and imprimatur, tend to be, pretty cerebral, facts-based, stating the issue over and over again. And my sense with Samuel is that he kind of gets into more of a, I don't want to break it down to just being kind of an emotive or feeling space, but he goes in kind of a different direction, and yet he's kind of equally relentless in terms of how he responds to the ongoing debate. And I find it fascinating because I've actually learned quite a bit from the two of you, just in terms of how different signs interact and debate, and quite frankly, a pretty even-keeled and respectful fashion.
Right. Well, Samuel, he's a Scorpio. He's got I believe, a stellium of planets in Scorpio, if I'm correct. He has a Sun, Moon, Neptune, Mercury in Scorpio. He's also got, of course, that Mars, Uranus, Venus conjunction that was occurring in November '67. So he's a very intense guy. He certainly has an agenda in terms of what he wants to push out there. I'm not entirely clear what it is, and I'm not entirely clear why he's so defiant against what I am attempting to do. However, I think it's great that he continues to debate me. I'm very confident I am going to come through correct on almost all my predictions, even though he finds them very upsetting in terms of the prospect that Obama may lose the election. And what I am seeing, I'm sort of jumping ahead, but what I am seeing here and getting to, and we'll get to this at a deeper level, is I'm not only seeing Obama losing, but what I am seeing, which I feel Sam is finding so upsetting, is the fact that the Democrats may suffer a catastrophic election in terms of the overall losses that will be occurring both in the House, the Senate, as well as the White House. And that is primarily due not simply because of policy, but simply because of the eroding in economic conditions, both globally and locally, and the fact that the stewardship of the president of the economy for the past 3.5 years. And this is something where Sam and I vehemently disagree on, where he believes Obama has been very proactive, very helpful. He acknowledges there's still economic problems, but the situation with the economy is far better than it was prior to 2009, which I disagree. Obviously, if you reading the post, you understand why. And that's where we disagree on. And Sam doesn't believe astrology can be applied in a mundane application in any way without in any objective way. He feels that if the astrologer has a certain bias towards a particular worldview, that astrologer is going to push that worldview regardless of what the astrological portents show. Using black box technology, which is what I use, that's very difficult to do. If the black box is showing one thing and I believe in another thing, and I always push up there what I see, and I don't alter my black box numbers to push my agenda. But of course, that's something Sam and I disagree on.
So, talk a little bit about the black box technology. When you guys, when you were running or building this, were you just crunching, dozens, hundreds, thousands of charts to try to find, where the commonalities were, where quote unquote the astrological truth would seep through the repetitive nature of the questions, the charts, the times, etc.?
I think it's somewhere in the hundreds where we would get very accurate, reliable data, and then we would have the computer decide what was weighing most heavily and then rank it, and then allocate a quantitative score, -5 plus 7. All right, and then we would make modifications along the way. Certainly where there was some discrepancies in the modeling. And then we would continue back-testing those models. We'd also do models where we found out, let's say, generals, military generals. We would find out, now there's certain traditional rules in astrology that say, well, if you have a Sun-Mars conjunction in the 10th house, that means you're a general. So we found some when we ran these type of studies. So we were able to build black boxes on profession, black boxes on income stream, black boxes on any type of scenario that you could possibly come up with. Very specific. And what we were doing is we would take the traditional rules, and from the traditional rules, the computer would see which traditional rules were relevant, which ones were not, discard those, find other factors hundreds of factors that would be almost impossible for any one person or a group of people to see it, astrologers to see at any time, and then include those factors into it. And then we would test these boxes over and over again until we felt within 85% certainty we had something that was really relevant. And then from there, we were able to do a lot of very interesting things, like, which is what I've been posting on Facebook on my blog, which not only in terms of intensity, the astrological intensity, but also looking at timing. Also, what we can do with the black box is put lag factors in. For example, as you probably know, Robert, when an aspect becomes exact or multiple aspects become exact, doesn't mean on that particular day or week is when we're going to see a major setback or challenge or problem, or in some cases a market knockdown. On the material level, on the physical level, in a way that can be experienced. And so we put those factors in as well. And so this is especially important when you look at the chart of Italy, for example, and do a black box projection, an economic black box projection over, from 2010 to 2015, and you can see, using those lag factors, when it's most likely you're going to see a run on the Italian banks, when you're going to see a beginning of an economic meltdown.
Mm-hmm. Right. One of the things that you've been posting a fair amount about recently is Fukushima, and you and I are in a complete agreement around this ongoing disaster, which is being just egregiously ignored by the mainstream media, obviously, because they don't want to freak people out. Have you done any forecasts and modeling on that reactor number 4?
Yes, I did. In fact, I was the first person, and you can look this up, Robert. Within 4 days, using mundane horror applications as news reports were coming in through the alternative media channels, I was able to determine it was a level 7 nuclear event early on, when the Japanese government and the U.S. government was saying it was only at a level 4 nuclear event. So I was able to establish that. Then from there, I was able to, through a series of follow-up horrors, determine the level of contamination, the scope of contamination, then using the horror chart itself and then applying it to astrolocality, put a perimeter that would actually exceed Tokyo. And as of today, as you probably know, in downtown Tokyo, they have found nuclear, the level of nuclear
particulate.
Yes, is equivalent to American nuclear waste. So
yeah.
You are seeing a spread of the nuclear cesium-137 particles, not only in the Pacific Ocean. I believe there's been 12 tons dumped in since the beginning of the crisis, but
right.
also in the water supply of northern Japan, and and also on the topsoil. So I go into that, and then I got a news report recently on the reactor number 4, all right, that is holding 1,500 fuel rods that's suspended 30 meters in the air and is falling apart. Is
right.
actually quite shaky, and a level M7 earthquake would bring down that the cooling pool of reactor number 4, and if that were to happen, and if the cooling pool would crash to the ground due to an earthquake or be compromised in any way, then the fuel rods would be exposed and would release 87 times the amount of radiation that would kill approximately 2.4 billion people on the planet, all right, in a short amount of time. So we're looking at a extinction level event. And then from there, I was able to, we know there's a 90% probability, by the way, that a M7 level earthquake will occur within 3 years in the Sendai region, which will compromise that reactor. So I'm going to post a black box shortly using the time that the level 4 reactor was compromised. And then from that point, we can get an idea of when it's most likely to occur.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously a pretty heavy situation, and there's absolutely no immediate sense of urgency on anybody's part to address this. And you and I were kind of talking a little bit. I think this is really where we started to connect, was during Bilderberg. And I looked at the attendees of Bilderberg, and there was not one attendee from Japan at Bilderberg. And I thought to myself, well, why is this? Well, it's because Japan is a lost cause, and they know this, and so therefore, why should they be invited to this summit? So what do you think? I mean, do you think that this, based on, I mean, obviously there's odds and there's probability. Is there any probability based on any of the charts that you've done? Let's say, with Jupiter and Gemini, there's some flash of genius, or maybe the Uranus of the United States or Mars of the United States wakes up somehow, and we get some private industry or somebody stepping out to say, hey, we want to deal with this. Have you discovered any variables in that chart or in those forecasts that look even remotely promising?
No. Actually, I believe the crisis will continue to escalate.
Yeah.
And I believe right now there's a 40% probability of the spent fuel pool will collapse between May 1st and July 2013. That could expose the MOX fuel rods. Like I said before, that has the potential to kill 2 billion people, resulting in a major crisis that is beyond anything that's unprecedented. So up to this time, I believe the United States military, with its vast level of classified technology, will get involved. The question is, it's just a matter of when, not if. But I believe all this begins to occur, looking at the timelines that I'm looking at, is shortly after the second Uranus-Pluto strike in September.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the reason for that is I see quite a bit of that particular second Uranus-Pluto hit make some very particular strong hits to the chart of Japan, the United States, and the UN, indicating that the UN will be a very busy place dealing with some massive global level emergency, which could be an economic one and an environmental one related to Fukushima.
Right, right. Well, we seem to be headed into this, it's almost like a linear accelerator of transformation, change, and some of which is just, quite frankly, dark matter. And, we're dealing with Fukushima, and we're dealing with the economic crisis in Europe. Let's talk a little bit about that now. You've done a fair amount of work and charts on Spain, certainly on Greece. Where's the next hot spot in Europe? Are we just gonna take the pink circuit, and is Portugal coming around here pretty soon?
I believe Italy is the one to look at. I've been saying that the whole time because look, the Eurozone breakup is going to have dire consequences for the global economy. I don't care what the Obama administration says. All right, and look, this Italy has nearly $2 trillion of sovereign debt. That is the nation to look for. The level of debt is much more than any of the other problematic nations in the Eurozone. All right? And besides the huge public debt, Italy has a very sluggish economy, aging population like Japan, and an unmotivated workforce and an overly theatrical and uncertain political environment. There is no way that based on these particular hits to the Uranus-Pluto strikes, to the Italian national horoscope, and the current situation that is brewing, it's unlikely that Italy will be able to sustain. It's unlikely. We're going to see a sovereign debt default and a massive sovereign debt default crisis emerge from Italy about now.
Mm-hmm.
About now. I think the timing is. I think shortly after, you'll see after the first Uranus-Pluto alignment on the 24th, that's when it's going to become quite clear. And sudden stop in financing to Italy, followed by massive social unrest, is what I am seeing between June 24th and September 21st of this year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's really interesting about this, William, is I've been getting into, over here in California, we have something called CAFR, which is being explored by this guy named Walter Burian. And essentially what CAFR is it's the California state budget that is kind of hidden away from people in the state of California and their ability to kind of explore it and determine kind of, what's really going on with the budget of the state. And what Walter Burian has found is that there are essentially two sets of books for the state of California. And then he's found that these two sets of books are almost spread out across, all platforms of accounting for various municipalities, whether it's a city or a county, a state, and even federal and in terms of the EU continental governments. And what Walter discovered was that there is the publicly held debits and credits, and then there's the privately held debits and credits. And when he got into the private investiture of the state of California is wealthy beyond belief, and the state of California could literally zero out the debt if they sold off, a modicum of the resources that the state is holding on to. And it's his belief and my belief as well that this exists across the board throughout many economies. And one of the things, obviously, that we'd be staring down with Italy would be the public debt, which would be the country of Italy, perhaps the private investiture, but also the immense amount of wealth that is hoarded by the Vatican, which is, by the way, in Italy, even though it's its own sovereign state and country. Have you looked at, from a horary perspective, how the Vatican is perceived, or the wealth of the Vatican and the Catholic Church is perceived during a time of economic crisis in Italy?
Yeah, I mean, I have looked at that. Actually, what I am seeing is a major power struggle occurring in the Catholic Church. And I believe that this is correlating very closely to the fact that the current Pope wants to step down. The current Pope, Benedict's health is deteriorating, and his ability to implement reforms and decisions that is so necessary for survival has been compromised. I believe right now there's that type of power struggle is also has very much to do with what you're referring to the properties that the church has control over. And I believe there's some serious issues that is arriving, that are brewing up out of that. I don't know the specifics enough. Again, this is all it's very difficult to get any really secular intelligence from this. But from what the charts are indicating is that we're going to see some very interesting developments come from the very top of the Vatican. I believe we're going to see a new pope this year, most likely towards the end of this year. I certainly would think it's sometime around the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I believe Benedict will step down, and we will see the next pope will most likely be an Italian pope at this point. And, it's going to get very interesting from there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So prophecy says, and I believe this is fleshed out in Nostradamus, that after Benedict, that this would be the last pope.
That's correct. Yes, that's correct. And according to the prophecy of St. Malachi, this last pope would be the pope that would begin with the end times, the beginning of the 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
This pope would reign for 7 years, right?
Yeah.
And we would see the beginning of the end of the Catholic Church, or at least the way it's structured now. So I believe the time of the revelations, as expressed in the last book of the Bible, is most likely to manifest in a much more literal fashion from what has been described starting this year.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the Jesuits and Opus Dei, do you think that they would ever elect a black pope?
I don't think that's likely. If the prophecy is correct, most likely the next pope will be an Italian pope.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's just my projection based on what I'm familiar with in the Malachi prophecy.
Right.
However, there's a lot of talk about that this next pope is going to be sort of tied in with the covert powers that be, the advanced oligarchy that sets policy for this planet. This is something that was discussed. That's been discussed quite a bit in many different journals on. Especially by Father Malachi Martin, who is very concerned about this period of time.
Yeah. I was actually at that cemetery where Malachi Martin is buried up in upstate New York last year. I was walking around there. It was pretty funny. I wanted to ask you about Occupy. I thought for sure that we would see the rebirth of Occupy, and I'm not necessarily an Occupy guy. Even though I was at Zuccotti Square 2 times, starting September 27th, and then a couple days later, I was pretty certain that we would have seen a much more virulent version of Occupy right about now, and quite frankly, it's not happening. And I'm wondering whether or not the marching orders and the sort of the blueprint of it from Soros on the way down is just not happening, whether the money's not being funded, or whether or not the Obama administration just wants to have kind of a cool and even keel playing field. Because, by the way, I believe that if you went far enough with the Occupy movement, it would go back to the White House. That's my take, and some of my research brought me to that point. What's your take on Occupy, and where are we with protests in the U.S. based on some of the charts that you've done?
Yeah, I'll answer that in 1 minute. I just wanted to add one thing on this Pope, on the next Pope.
Yeah.
According to Malachi's prophesied list, the next Pope, right, after the current one, Pope Benedict, this final Pope will be called Petrus Romanus and will lead the church into a great tribulation and the destruction of Rome. All right? And some Catholic mystics believe that he will be an infiltrator under the satanic control. Now, whether you believe in Satan or not is, a debatable issue. But I do believe what is being alluded to is the fact that this next Pope will be very intertwined with the workings and machinations of the advanced oligarchy, or the globalists, as George Norrie would call them on Coast to Coast, and their ultimate plan for the final solution for this planet that they've been putting into place for,
3,000 years?
Well, for 3,000 years. I think it's obvious since the mid-'60s, since the death of Kennedy.
Right. Absolutely. That's when it became obvious.
Right, that's when it became obvious, yes, exactly. So yeah. I believe that this, you will see, the evangelical prophecy. This prophecy refers to a false prophet who helps to usher in the Antichrist.
Right.
This is exactly what the prophecy is about. So I'm just, that's why I think we have to keep an eye on this time period. And according to the prophecy and various other calculations done by these Catholic mystics, the time frame is around now 2012, and this was written. These type of writings by these mystics were written well over 40, 50 years ago. So, yeah. So going back to Occupy, I believe the Uranus Pluto. You had massive revolts going on in the 60s when you had Uranus Pluto, right? That was the conjunction.
Yeah, that's right. The conjunctions. Yep.
All right. Then you look. Okay, let's go back. Let's just go back further than that. You had the American Revolution. All right. You had the Uranus Pluto square.
Right.
That was the revolution. Then you had the opposition. That was the French Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Then you have the massive revolts throughout Europe in the late 1840s, 1850. That was the time of the Second Industrial Revolution. All right. Then you had the women's suffrage movement in the early 1900s, early 1900s, and then you have the Great Depression, and then you have what they don't really talk about is the massive socialist, communist movements that were going on throughout this country in the 30s.
Yep.
Right? Then you had the 60s social cultural revolution, and now we're having a type of revolt that is pervasive. Basically, this revolt is the people that represent the people who are revolting. They feel the government, they have a non-representational government. Government no longer represents their needs, their concerns. They know what we're going to classify what it will be called. It's a movement, and I believe Uranus too, especially this summer. Occupy Wall Street becomes Occupy All Street.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we'll see. It's going to get much more organized. what's going to happen is you're going to see, especially the Uranus-Pluto generation, those kids born in the 60s who now who have Uranus-Pluto highly tenated in their chart, who are in their late 40s now, who should be in their peak earning years, and yet that group right now is much riddled with underemployment. Many of those people in their late 40s right now throughout this country who are making six figures are now in their third year working as manager for Burger King, all right?
Yeah.
Waiting for that six-figure job to come back that will never come back.
That's right.
I think it'll hit the breaking point. This summer is the breaking point when the majority of those Uranus-Pluto babies, Uranus-Pluto generation, all right, realizes that this economy will never come back to the level where it needs to, based on the current policies of both the Democrat and Republican, all right, which basically do not serve anything else except the interest of the advanced oligarchy, all right. That is what's going to happen. You're going to see the change and morph into something very, very different, but it becomes Occupy All Street. And I don't think it's going away. I think it's going to increase in intensity, and it's going to accelerate. It's going to become a global phenomenon, even in China. I see it all throughout the world, spreading throughout the world. The zeitgeist is coming back, but it's going to be much more intense than it was in the 60s because you have 7 successive Uranus-Pluto hits in such a short amount of time. I don't believe our civilization has had this much autoplanet activity with such intensity in such compressed time levels in the past in over 3,000 years.
I agree. I mean, I think you'd probably have to go back to, antediluvian, records or prehistory and get into Atlantis. I mean, here, we just went through the transit of Venus. And what was really interesting about this transit of Venus versus the last one in 2004 was that in 2004, the blogosphere was really just kind of an idea. I mean, blogs were just starting to kind of take off in 2004. The social media sites were, I think MySpace was, again, just an idea at that time. And, fast forward 8 years later, the blogosphere is a universe unto itself. Social media sites, i.e. Facebook and Twitter and, the usual suspects, they're exploding. So the transit of Venus became a planetary event in a way that it did not exist as in 2004. To me, that's kind of indicative, William, of where we are with what I would call, the technosphere or the collective gnosis. I mean, we are really creating this global brain in a very unique and I think a kind of an unpredictable way. And I know that there are people out there, and I'm one of them, who have seen the color revolutions as being astroturfed, managed, and promulgated through the social media networks. But there's a whole other side of social media, which I think you're talking about with the explosion of this Occupy movement that puts us in a very intense and accelerated and compressed area that we've never been before.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. I believe a lot of the astrologers, look, my biggest issue, Robert, with the astrological community, especially with the mundane astrologers, I just got back from UAC, United Astrology Conference in New Orleans. I attended almost all the mundane lectures that I could. And I can tell you one thing, most of the astrologers are mocked and playing down. And that's my biggest issue with Sam Reynolds. Is I said, Sam, you're not real. This is not enough action. This is not just another protest. This is something much bigger. It's going to have a volcanic intensity to it, and it's going to keep accelerating until something is. And I believe one of the things going down is this global economy. That's untenable. And that's the basic gist of what I'm trying to say. Any in your personal life or in that global, both unsustainable and untenable.
We lost William. Just when it was getting good. Are you there, William? Yeah. Hey, you kind of dropped off there a little bit.
Where did I drop off on? Because I was on
You're dropping off of probably the most important part of our conversation. Volcanic was the last piece that I heard, and that's where you faded out.
Basically, what I'm saying is this: both on a personal and collective level, anything that is unsustainable and untenable during this period, since 2010, will begin to collapse. Will come to an end. I believe most of the astrologers, all right, with some rare exceptions, based on many of the sites I've looked at, attending UAC lectures by some of the world-class astrologers speaking, have marginalized and played down the impact of what has been in progress since the Cardinal T-squared in July 2010, which is a once-in-a-2,000-year type of event.
Yeah.
And which is beginning to manifest its with greater intensity and power its effects across the globe. I'm also seeing this in personal lives. We're seeing this at every level. And I am, this is my big disagreement with Sam. I was letting Sam know, Sam believes that, this is a period of change, but not as dramatic as I'm making it out to be. I am saying to your audience and to you that this will be one of the most fundamental shifts in civilization that when we look back on this period. I believe what we're ultimately moving towards is a Type 1 civilization. We're in transition from a Type 0 to a Type 1 civilization.
Well, you and I are in agreement with that, and I think that a lot of this is yet to be played out. And my predilection or my filter or how I view things is that there's a lot more collusion and planning going on at an esoteric and magical level, not just in terms of kind of the vox populi. I mean, there's not much planning with the vox populi. Let's be clear about that. But I'm talking about not the 1%, not the 0.5%, but the 0.25% that is driving the time-space paradigm on the planet. And quite frankly, using astrology and using astrological movements to further the agenda and deepen the trance and the enslavement of the human through time and space. That's my take on this. And I think that we're breaking away from this whole time-space model, and that the reality construct is not going to be able to hold. And you're going to, my take on it, William, is we're going to see some high strangeness, really bizarre stuff coming out.
Totally agree with you. Look, one of the things I believe that since the Mayans talked quite a bit, not just about the Mayan end date, but they talked quite a bit in their prophecies about the May 20th annular solar eclipse, all right, that made a direct hit to the European horoscope, the United States horoscope, and a number of other horoscopes. And what I believe is that the period of deniability has come to an end. That even between May 20th and December 21st, I believe that that there will be such a major upheaval in the global economic system, all right, and the political uncertainty will increase to such a level, including food shortages, water shortages. You're going to see fuel prices variances. There will be a compromise of there will be the uncertainty level will increase and the global anxiety level will increase to such a state that a sufficient amount of the population that had been in denial will no longer be able to, and the powers that be will no longer be able to get away with the suppression of the geopolitical, economic, and social defiance that is now taking place, that's been erupting, that's been in progress. And I totally agree with you. I just think that we as astrologers need to be the voice and the mouthpiece as best we can, all right, about where we're moving as a civilization and why this is happening. But again, and I just want to repeat myself here, anything that's not sustainable or not tenable will not last in the new coming paradigm.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about some of these planetary shifts that we're currently experiencing and will be experiencing. Right now, we just had Jupiter go into Gemini. Here you are, you're on my show. We're talking about different models of predictability, the fusion of computer science and astrology. I mean, we're right in alignment with Jupiter and Gemini as being a harbinger of information systems. Let's talk a little bit about that. And for me, I think the real hammer, William, is Saturn in Scorpio coming in October, and that actually hitting the Pluto and Scorpio generation. And my take, just initially on Saturn and Scorpio, is the revelation of deep-seated corruption in ways that are just completely no longer undeniable. So let's talk a little bit about Jupiter and Gemini, what you see, and let's move forward into that Saturn and Scorpio shift in October.
Well, I think that the Jupiter in Gemini is certainly going to, I thought about the Jupiter and Gemini effect mostly on Mitt Romney's natal chart. The fact that there was the annual eclipse on May 20th, solar eclipse on Romney's ascendant, and shortly thereafter, Jupiter will conjunct that ascendant degree at 0 Gemini. So I believe there's going to be some shift in the Republican Party. I'm hearing rumor that Rand Paul might be the vice president nominee. He's a Tea Partier, an anti-Federal Reserve, he's part of the anti-Federal Reserve agenda.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite possible. We may see some unexpected. Also, I believe with Jupiter and Gemini and Saturn going into Scorpio, you're going to see the greater probability of black swan events erupting. All right, black swan events that could really set off a number of crises. But also, what I'm seeing is a dollar collapse.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's also the Jupiter and Gemini and the Saturn and Scorpio. I believe people are going to be running back to gold. I think the gold is being suppressed, all right, by a lot of the naked short selling that I see going on,
That's just the universe punctuating the meaning behind what you're saying.
Okay, very good. I believe, so you're going to see that. The Jupiter and Gemini is, the gold always tends to rise when Jupiter is in Gemini, and when you look back historically. So I believe gold should be rising because of the monetarization of the debt will be rising exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, I believe that shortly after, I believe that's the scenario we're heading in. Also, Saturn and Scorpio, Saturn will conjunct Mars in late August, right near the Israeli ascendant at 0 Scorpio, and then shortly thereafter, Mars and Saturn cross the Israeli ascendant. There's no doubt we are seeing the prospects of a real regional war in the Middle East. And I'm not just talking Syria, I'm talking Iran. I believe a strike is about 55% probability right now, and it will increase throughout this summer.
Right. Well, what's interesting, because there's a lot of backroom deals that go on, and I'm of the mind that there's really no two-party system, and that all this is pretty much settled beforehand, i.e. Bush and Kerry, skull and bones, handshakes, walk away when the voter rolls get questioned, do what you're asked, and kind of roll over. And if you look at Romney and you look at who he's going to put on his cabinet, it is really Bush 2.0. From Michael Chertoff on down, you're going to get everybody that you got with Bush, and all those guys are dual citizens. So if indeed he is going to be elected, and I think that there's probably a strong probability that it will take place, by the way, then what we would see would be something along the lines of a pre-Romney strike on the Obama watch, and then Romney coming in to jump in and manage that, and with all the transnational influence that he's going to have in his cabinet. That's my sense.
I think you're probably right. That scenario is a very likely scenario. I do think, and I'm not planning to vote for either, candidate. I am not partisan. I don't follow any ideology. I call it like I see it, and I think you do as well, from what I've read from your work. But I think Romney is. I don't think Romney is going to pick somebody who's so traditional that is, who's just. I believe that he needs to add something. In order to get a lot of those independent votes in those key battleground states.
Right.
So, I believe that's the Jupiter and Gemini thing. He's going to take somewhat of a risk, although, it's so relative at this point.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So what I think we need to look at here is, I believe between now and September, we're going to get a very clear idea what the next 3 years is going to be about. So I would say from July 1st to October 1st, we're going to get a very clear idea what this Uranus-Pluto is where it's going to want to take us, right? And I think there's a lot of speculation still, and nobody's quite clear. I just say that the big mistake would be to marginalize and say, well, it's going to be more or less the same thing. I don't think so at all. I know you don't think so. And I do agree that there's a lot of handshaking going on behind the scenes right now. Obviously, it's very interesting that Mitt Romney is doing so well, certainly after the last Bilderberg meeting in the polls. It's just
exactly.
State, even blue states for that matter. So I do think there's a lot of manipulation going on, but I believe the real revolution is not going to really be about the public government. I believe it's about the invisible government, the collapse of the invisible government of the United States. The advanced oligarchy that's been in place for at least 100 years or longer. All right. Yeah. And it's been controlling the office of the presidency. That is in charge of suppressing the secret of extraterrestrial technology and reverse engineering projects that have been going on since the late 40s.
Yep.
And the fact that the national security state is basically the place where all the real stuff takes place, all the real decision making at the deepest levels of the national security state. So I believe that the Uranus-Pluto is going to disrupt that level, as well as the things that we're seeing with Occupy Wall Street and some of the more obvious factors we're seeing with the problems we're seeing with the economy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Real quick, William, Rick Clay, I don't know if you're familiar with Rick Clay's work, but he did some absolutely stellar detective work on the Olympics, the London Olympics. And he got into sort of the deep symbolism of what was happening, where it was taking place. He did use some astrological patterning and some forecasting, but it was more than just that. And then he was a young guy, very cool guy. He was also he was a graphic artist and made music, and had appeared on Red Ice Radio a few times. And then he died. And there are a number of people inside the quote-unquote alternative research community that believe that Rick Clay was taken out. But his work with the London Olympics has lived on. A lot of people have picked up on that trail. Have you cast any charts around the London Olympics?
I haven't. I've been so focused on what's going on in the Eurozone area. However, there's some very interesting developments. If you look at the UK chart and you look at the Uranus-Pluto hits to the UK chart, especially in the month of September, you see some very, very powerful portents unfolding. So, I don't know what is his particular predictions, or at least a couple that, because I don't know where he's going with that.
Well, Rick's predictions, and they kind of dovetail with my friend Ellis Taylor, who has been working on what he calls the mega spell, and that there are a number of events that Ellis has mapped out, and I think Rick was kind of on the same path, that happen at a global level, which are about the accrual of psychic energy. and that it has its zenith or its sort of magical working, dark magical working via the London Olympics, and that there's something ominous that will take place. Now, there are some people that believe that there's kind of a quote unquote soul harvest, because they've got this kind of like soul harvesting technology that they're working with. Other people are saying that it will be the implementation of not just the television cams and all around London, but even greater and more invasive security measures as a run-up to the Olympics, like microphones everywhere and kind of a vast listening and viewing network. And then there are other people that say that the London Olympics will be a false flag, and it will be kind of the trigger event to perhaps maybe get into a place like Iran, vis-a-vis what happened in Munich in 1972. If you look at, by the way, William, the Olympics and the history of the Olympics and what happens with the Olympics and where they show up, it's actually pretty interesting what takes place after those Olympics. So that's where Rick was going with this, I think.
Well, if I'm correct, in 2008, while the economic crisis and the Lehman meltdown was unfolding, the Olympics was on, and many people were distracted from that. They weren't focused on it because they were watching the Olympics. I believe we may have the same scenario when the J.P. Morgan crisis, the derivative, I believe there's a very high probability of collapse at hand, and that has very much to do with the fact of, due to the $70 trillion of derivatives, where based on interest rate swaps, based on the movement of Treasury bill interest rates, and where 81% of all derivatives are coming from. And I believe that there is a possibility we're going to see a massive disruption with that derivative market during the Olympics, and that will lead into the meltdown that seems to come out of nowhere, just like it did in 2008.
Right.
So I believe we're going to have a stop event of some sort. Of course, the level of magnitude is the most difficult one to predict, but I do think there's a high probability we may see a 2008 Lehman event repeat itself, but with much greater magnitude to the global economy. And it will not simply be another Fed bailout will fix the problem, because of the total cost of derivatives. The total amount of derivatives happening right now is $230 trillion. The risk capital of J.P. Morgan, by the way, which based on the horoscope of J.P. Morgan is very vulnerable to the Uranus-Pluto alignment, is 500 times. So their risk capital is 500 times what they have invested. By the way, Goldman Sachs is 2,000 times risk capital.
Wow.
Yeah. So I do believe those derivative markets are going to start blowing up. And I keep telling everyone, it's not the stock market, it's not the Fed, it's the derivative market.
Derivatives, absolutely, derivatives. Yeah.
And we need to look at that. And I believe that is likely to really erupt during the time of the Olympics. And that will not be the focus, of course, but that's the time when I believe that will happen. And maybe that's something tied into what these authors are writing about.
Yeah. Well, William, this has been an absolutely fascinating hour, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you and talking with you about this. One of the things I wanted to ask you before you take off and we transition into the second hour of the show is, Sam brought up a pretty good point on Facebook, which was, okay, well, how can, if these things are true, the things that you were talking about and I'm talking about, if they're true, how can astrology help? How can astrology change, or how can astrology enlighten or transform? What is the role of astrology as a solution? And that was one of the questions I wanted to throw out to you.
Well, I believe a lot of the solutions are there. They're implied. I think the Neptune in Pisces is really part of the solution.
I agree.
Okay?
Yeah.
The problem is this, Robert, and I said this to Sam. People are just not going to be open to solutions because you still have a good segment of the population still fixed that either Mitt Romney or Barack Obama are the only type of solutions. It's either or, all right, or they're so fixed in their current paradigm of thinking that any solution to the problem outside of the way they view things or the way things ought to be is not going to be accepted yet until the crisis occurs. We're already in a crisis, but I'm talking where the level of the crisis gets to the point where a good segment, or a sufficient segment of the population understands now that it's never going to go back to normal unless some game changer takes place. And when people are open to a game changer, then we as astrologers can start offering those solutions to the collective through the medium that we're talking on now and through the internet and hopefully through some direct interaction with some policymakers so that then we can transition to a new paradigm, a new operating system, a new way of being that's vastly different than what we've been modeled on for the past 2,000 years. And until that occurs, I'm holding back on some of those solutions right now because I know all I'm going to get is resistance from most of the people I put it out to, if I would put it out there now.
Well, I'm certainly thrilled that you're out there doing your thing and doing your best to awaken and enlighten people with your particular brand of astrology and the fusion of technology and astrology and your horary predictive models. And I'm thrilled to have gotten to know you. And I want to thank Greer for suggesting that we become Facebook friends. And people can find you on Facebook, and they can find you at your website as well, right, William?
Absolutely, Robin. It was a pleasure talking with you. And if we get to do this again, I'll be better prepared. I was I was sort of struggling there trying to get our connection set up and get all my charts in place and some of my reference points. But I really had a great time talking with you, and I certainly enjoy your posts and on Facebook and your insights as well.
Okay, well, we'll see you out there in the virtual realm. Take good care, William.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. That was William Stickevers, and you can find him at williamstickevers.com, which is his website, and you can find him on Facebook as well. Super bright guy, and he gets it. He totally gets it. And we may be coming at this from slightly different angles, but if you want to track what's happening in terms of now, horary astrology is kind of an interesting form of astrology. How it works is you ask a question, and at that time, when the question is asked, the answer theoretically is in the chart. Okay, so he's using horary predictive models based on whatever question he's staring down, whether it's Italy, whether it's the Eurozone, whether it's Obama, whether it's Romney, and he's using the horary methodology in order to do that. Okay, so you're listening to Navigating the Astrological Matrix. Again, I want to thank my guest, William Stickevers. And I'm going to be transitioning to the second part of the show, which is I'm going to be doing some free readings. What I'm going to try to do now is I'm going to play some music, and I've got to get a second computer up to get the chat room up and running. If you're on hold, and I'm seeing 901-757 and 1111, which is a Skype line, if you're on hold, please stay there. I will get to you. It's just going to take me a couple of minutes. I'm going to play some music, and then I'm going to try to open the chat room via another computer. And so hang in there, and just give me just a bit of time here, just a little bit of time, and I'll be back in about 5 minutes. I'm going to play some music. I'm going to play let's just go with something pretty easy. Let's go with Quarantine or Quran or Quarantine. This is something I did many years ago. It gives me 4 minutes worth of distraction so I can set up the chat room. I'll be back in 4 minutes and 43 seconds. Here we go. All right, that was yours truly, a.k.a. Diamond Matrix. It is Jupiter and Gemini, and we can't have alter ego pseudonyms, multiple personalities that explore, describe, and illuminate different aspects of who we are. In essence, people, it's okay to be schizophrenic. Get used to it. It's the way of the world now, and maybe as it always has been. I'm going to be getting into some free readings now. And free readings, live readings. By the way, big shout out to Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen. It's their birthday today. Not really. Poor girls. Twins, Gemini twins. Yes, that's what they are. It's almost cliche that the Olsen twins would be Geminis, don't you think? I mean, on so many levels. All right. Without further delay, let's get into talking with the public and jump into some readings here. Jupiter and Gemini, let's jam. Let's go to the caller who's been waiting quite a while on the 901 line here, or 901 area code. Hi, you're in the air with Robert. Hello? Hold on. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yeah, hey, how's it going?
This is Lenise. How are you?
Lenise, hey, how are you?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm getting ready to go on a little vacation here, a little 3-day vacation.
Well, good for you. You deserve it.
Yeah, it's like, when I come back, I've got so much stuff on my plate when I come back. It's not even funny. So I'm going to have to really chill and recollect my cellular structure while I'm away, because I got a big runway ahead of me. What's going on with you?
Same with you. I'm recollecting and having to stay calm and protecting my energy field, trying not to take on other people's energy, and just a lot.
Boy, isn't that just a major dance that we have to do? It's like,
when you become aware of it, it's really on. It's when you're not aware of all this stuff, it's not a heavier load, but awareness is a great responsibility.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I'll tell you, I like to share stories from my own personal life,
okay.
and because maybe they have resonance for people. And I have a very interesting connection with my ex-wife. Let's put it that way. It's not terrible like some exes are, but it's also not necessarily deeply harmonious and peachy keen either. And there are jagged moments. And the challenge is that a lot of times we're trying to communicate with nuance and some sensitivity through mediums like text and email that just don't convey that, right?
Uh-huh.
And so if there's any kind of friction between two people, the likelihood that something will be misinterpreted via a text or an email just goes through the roof, right? And so I had a moment like this with her the other day, and and I look back at my original sort of text, and it was like, it was a little edgy, but I thought about it, like, well, why did I appear to be that way, or why did it come across as being edgy? Because I was trying to be objective with my communication. And I realized that at that time I felt hurt. I felt like, I just felt hurt, and my heart was aching, and and so my normal response, Mars and Cancer in the 8th house, squaring my sun. It's like, I'm gonna say something. It wasn't drastic or harsh, but it also wasn't filled with a lot of fluffy platitudes to sort of cushion my statement. And she came back really hard. I was like, wow, where's this coming from? And now it was up to me. Well, where am I going to take this? Am I just going to ignore it? And ignoring it in some ways would be okay. But then I said to myself, okay, I'm gonna morph the language just a little bit here, and I'm going to own it. I'm just going to own it and say, thanks for your perception. It shows that you care. And and I was being honest with that. And all of a sudden, the energy shifted. I didn't feel I had the same charge around it. So we're having to do this dance about keeping our flame, our inner flame, lit and burning. And that's what it's about right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's kind of disappointing that you got to do all this, but you got to do it.
Here, what's the reward for awareness? It's more awareness is what it is.
Yeah, well, I want to get to the easy part.
Well, I think the easy part, I'll use a sailing metaphor, right? When you sail, because the show is about navigating, right? If you sail, there's a lot of sophisticated moves that you have to make when you're going from, one landmass to another landmass. You've got to tack. You've got to put your sails to the wind. You've got to go wing on wing. Sometimes you have to put your sails down because, it's just too intense and the conditions they're not conducive to doing anything. Sometimes you have to dock somewhere and drop your anchor for a while. There's all these things that are, I think, metaphoric of sailing. And really what you get, ultimately, I think what you can get good at is just navigating and sailing through your life and understanding the conditions and when to do some of these things. What astrology actually has kind of an interesting connection with sailing, because the astrolabe was used by both astrologers and navigators at sea. So there's a connection here between the stars, star charts, and where people are going, but also in the chart itself. You can have a wind at your sails moment with Jupiter. Looking at Jupiter where it conjuncts or trines, and you want to take advantage of that. You want to put both sails up, wing on wing. You want to cover as much ground as possible. Put the pedal to the metal, and or that's another metaphor, but you know what I'm saying, right? And if you've got opposition or you've got squares in your chart, then you need to figure out a different angle. You could sail against the wind. You just have to figure out how to do it. You've got to tilt the boat at a certain angle, put the sail at a certain angle, and then actually have the wind progress you or move you, sort of diagonally, and you cut across and you go back and forth. And, so there's, we just have to get really adept at understanding these cycles and understanding how to move with the cycles. And I think that's where astrology really comes into play.
Yeah, that's it. But to know when to roll, know when to fold, know when to walk away, and know when to run.
No, exactly. Like for instance, I've got this Jupiter-Pluto square coming up, and it's kind of one of these things where, I need to be careful about, sort of the agenda that I push. I've got to be careful about not pissing people off with this Jupiter-Pluto square. So, on the one hand, it's like, yeah, I want to accomplish a lot of things, and I want to be, really kind of ambitious, and it's like, okay, I got the Jupiter-Pluto square. Let me force the issue a little bit, but I can't be too forceful, because during that square, because my Jupiter's in the 7th house, my Pluto's in the 9th house, conjunct my midheaven, I've got to be really conscious and aware that I can't really draw attention to myself in ways that can be deemed controversial, which will be kind of hard for me, to be honest with you. So we need to understand these things. And I think Jupiter right now is probably a good place to start our astrological discussion. Do you want me to look at where Jupiter is in your chart?
Yeah, and see if it's a good time for me to move. I'm thinking about moving in with my sister, and she's in Aries, and I'm kind of iffy about it. On the one hand, I've got this duality about it. I want to do it, and then I want to move to another apartment, and I'm just really torn. I don't know what to do.
When's your birthday, Lanice? When's your birthday again?
July 5th, 1963.
1963. So do you have a Sun square with your sister? Cancer, Aries square. Do you have that going on?
I don't know.
When's her birthday?
April 3rd, 1970.
Yeah, you're in a direct square with your sister.
Yeah, because she really can't stand me at times.
I don't know. I'm not sure I'd want to live. I would not live with somebody that have a direct, unless, of course, you want to look at it as a real learning experience. I'm not sure you do. Cancers need their own space, Lanice. I'm gonna be bold enough to say that. Now, what's interesting, though, all right, here's a little wrinkle.
Who can give me real advice on their opinion?
Wrinkle in the program is that you have Jupiter in Aries, okay? Right. So your Jupiter conjuncts her sun. Not all bad. Not all bad. But I'll tell you, if you want to get along with her, with that Jupiter in Aries, you got to play by her rules. If you play by her rules and you agree with her, by the way, if you do that, then you can have a very nice stay there.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I said. You know, it's going to have to almost be like I'm going to be a child. You know, whatever she says to do, I'm going to have to do it and not have any comment or anything on it. I kind of figured that one out, but thank you for confirming that.
Well, if you want to be really sophisticated about it, though, okay, you would have there would only be maybe a brief period of time, let's say 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still advocating you get your own place, by the way. But let's say it was 30 days, and you were just going along with the program. At the end of 30 days, you would have her entrained and really believing that you completely agree with her all the time. In which case, you would see a different side of her. And all of a sudden, she would be like, "Oh, Lenise, what do you want to do today? Oh, Lenise, how can I help you?" Because Aries want to be in control. I mean, they want to be able to kind of drive their own program. And there's nothing wrong with that. And your Jupiter would give her the expansive potential of doing that in her own home. But let's focus on you. You've got Mercury in Gemini at 5 degrees. I'm sorry, Cancer at 5 degrees. And you've got Venus in Gemini at 29 degrees. So you're going to get the benefit of the Jupiter transit towards the end of Jupiter. It's not going to be for another year. But with Mercury in Cancer and Sun in Cancer, I just think you need your own place. You need your own place to have your own thoughts, to have your own kind of layout and all that. Now, with Venus in Gemini, theoretically, you could share your place, but it would have to be your place. So you understand what I'm saying? So you could share your house with somebody else, not necessarily vice versa. Although you could do it with your sister, you would just have to let her be the boss for about a month, and then it'd be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing about it is that I really don't need anything else on my plate, and dealing with her would be a biggie with all else that I have going on.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to advocate you find your own place with that Cancer Sun and Mercury in Cancer. And, oh, by the way, we're coming up on your solar return and Cancer, so that would be actually a very good time to move. And I would wait. I think Mercury goes retrograde. I'd have to look at it, but Mercury, there's a brief window where Venus goes direct before Mercury goes retrograde. You may want to find that time.
Okay.
Let's just look at the
move time is going to be July 10th. That's when my lease is up, so that's when I'll be out.
All right, let's look at that. That might be actually a good time. Let's find out.
Okay.
Okay, July 10th. Okay, so great time. Let's see. Mercury is direct. It goes retrograde on the 15th, by the way. And Venus is direct, forward, conjuncting your. It's still a ways off from your natal, your Mars in Gemini. Mars is in Libra at that time. Jupiter 6 degrees Gemini, and let's see, Saturn is direct. So there's a lot of direct action happening. And Uranus in Aries goes retrograde on Friday the 13th. By the way, that would be a very intense day on the planet, that Friday the 13th with Uranus retrograde. So I would say yes, go for it. If you can figure out how to do this and you get everything in place and get your new lease in place before the 15th, because actually the 15th is when Mercury goes retrograde, that day. So you could move on a Mercury retrograde as long as you sign all your contracts and are in agreement to move on that day.
Mm-hmm. Well, everything will be done by the 10th, so that'll keep me away from the Mercury retrograde.
Good. So I would, if I were you, on July 1st, I'd start looking for a place.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know where the place is, and let me tell you this. I went to look at it, and I love it. It's a new luxury apartment, and it's not really much more than I'm paying now. And the name of the street is Bernice.
Bernice.
It's on Bernice Drive, and my name is Lenise. And I used to have a doll named Bernice. So when I saw that, I said, this must be the place for me.
Nice. I like that. Lenise and Bernice. Yeah, that's cool. Excellent. Is it going to be close to any kind of water at all?
Well, the swimming pool, that's it.
Good. You got a swimming pool. You need that with your Cancer sun. And Mercury and Cancer, you got to stay around that water. So, well, good. I'm all in favor. Thumbs up. Just make it happen. And get there. Close your deal before the 15th for sure. Okay.
Oh, I will. It'll be definitely before the 15th.
All right.
Either way it goes, either if I stay here, if I move, that'll be great. But if I have to work with this Aries for 30 days, that'll be great too. And thanks for giving me the advice, which I already knew. I said, well, I'm going to have to agree with everything that she said. And she carries a negative energy, so I don't know.
I'll tell you what. If you somehow had to live with her, you give her 30 days and let her be the boss, and I guarantee you, within 30 days, you'll be the boss. Trust me on this.
Okay. Well,
all
seems
right.
like it's out either way. Thank you so much, Rick.
I'm going to put you,
Robert.
it's okay. I'm going to put you back on hold, right? Because you listen, right?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
All right. Take care, Lenise.
Good talking with you. Thank you.
Yeah, nice talking with you again. That's our friend Lenise. Let's go to the 757, Lenise in Memphis, Tennessee. Hey, thanks for holding and being patient. You're on the air. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, how are you? I'm just listening.
You're just listening? Okay, you want me to put you back on hold then?
Sure.
I'll put you on mute. Thank you for listening. Appreciate that.
No problem.
All right. So let's go to our internet caller and let's see if they'd like to talk and not listen. You're welcome to listen, but you can also talk too.
Hey.
Hey, is this Nathan?
It sure is.
Hey, how good am I? I guessed it within one syllable. The hey. What's going on, brother?
I think you're pretty clairvoyant anyway. I probably couldn't have said anything. You probably would have got it.
What's going on, man?
Well, I'm kind of in a little, my brother wants to buy a guitar, but he wants me to buy a case and then ship it to him, and I don't know if when he wants to pay me. So he's a Gemini on June 9th, 1953.
A Gemini, huh? He wants you to do the. Well, he's feeling emboldened and empowered with his Jupiter and Gemini to get you to do the shipping, right?
Well, he wants me to buy a case too,
and buy a case.
And he doesn't really want to pay me for it. He would pay me up front for it. And I have a history of, he's my older brother, and I have a history of at least a couple dozen things that, I have bad financial experiences.
So, pardon the pun, Nathan, but you have a case history with your brother?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here's the solution. You ready?
Yeah.
You probably already know he's not going to be able to pay you for it. Or if he does, he'll take his sweet time. You got to figure out something he can do for you. What can he do for you? You got to figure out some kind of a trade here.
Well, he could do some electrical work at the house.
That's what I would do. Have him come over.
But I don't know what he would do. He might throw things around and, have me do all the work to help him and,
Well, you're going to, I think for you, you've got two choices here. Number one, follow your instincts and not send him the case. Well, three options. Okay. Number one, buy the case. No, don't buy the case. Don't send him the case. That's one option, and then let the chips fall where they may. Option number two is do it unconditionally. Buy the case, send the case, and don't expect anything from him, and don't even expect anything from anybody else, but see maybe if you can get to a place of just pure generosity and where the universe might show up to compensate you. But you'd have to get to a really clear place for that and be totally unattached and really engaged in the act of giving. And that's, and that way you take him out of the loop and say, I'm just going to see as an experiment where my generosity shows up, maybe in some other place.
I just gave him a brand new bicycle about a year ago, and he said he was going to, I brought up his Motif 8 to him. I got back from Andre Crouch over in L.A., and his keyboard didn't want to give it back, so I went up to the valley, and then I drove it up to Sacramento for him, and he said he was going to give me half everything, and he didn't give me a dime.
All right. So his track record is not good. So take the equation of getting anything from him out of the picture. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do it, then you would just do it unconditionally, as cleanly, as clearly as possible. And again, use this as an experiment to work with the universe abundantly, theoretically, and have it, come back to you without any kind of time frame or any kind of expectation. That's another possibility. The third possibility is that you get him to do something for you as some form of a trade, and then you have to deal with him around that, which would engage you more in your interactivity. And then the other option is not to do it, and I think coming to some clear, kind of objective response to any of those, the clear is really the key phrase here, would be your best course of action.
The third one you say?
The third one, so let's go over them again. The first one is you go ahead, you buy it, you send it to him with the expectation that he will repay you, but obviously that's probably not going to happen based on everything that he's done in the past, i.e. the case history. The second option would be to buy it and send it, and to do it in a way that was kind of experimental. Like you would say to yourself, I am divested of any of our history. I'm divested of getting this returned to me in any way, shape, or form by him. I'm doing it unconditionally, and yet I'm using this in a conscious way to see how the universe might show up in another part of my life. In essence, you would...
So even if he doesn't help me...
No.
Or even if he doesn't give me a dime, the universe could show up. And,
That's right. But you would have to enter into this consciously, and with kind of a playful and curious spirit, and it would be one of those things where you would just have to let it go. What you would do is say, I'm doing this as kind of an experiment to see how this might manifest in my life, and I'm going to again divest any kind of compensation from my brother or even the universe itself. But I'm going to do this in this spirit. This is my intention, just to see where it shows up. That could be interesting, and it would give you kind of a creative angle to this. The other angle would be to work out some form of agreed upon compensation that would not be monetary with him, but then you would have to get into interactivity with him, which could escalate your process, which again would be interesting if you're willing to learn something from it, but maybe you've learned all you can from that, so I'm not sure that would actually be a solid course of action. And then the fourth piece would just be to say no.
Okay. Hey, well, thanks a lot.
You're welcome. What's going on with your house?
I'm just, I'm kind of upside down on the house, and I'm just barely getting money to pay my credit card bills, and I'm a couple days behind on the payment today, so I'm trying to figure out a magic, a creative financing to be able to get the mortgage paid this month.
All right. Well, let me give you a little, perhaps a creative potential solution for your house. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay. What if, and maybe you're already kind of there, but what if you decided to turn your house into a full-blown music studio? Okay, and I'm talking, digital processing, whatever it is that you'd like to do. right?
Uh-huh.
And what if you took that idea for your house and to turn it into this music studio, and you put it onto Kickstarter as an idea, and to fund the recreation of your house as a music studio. And here's the angle that I think could be interesting. You ready? Work with neighborhood kids to bring them into your home and show them the ropes with recording, with playing. So now your house becomes not just a music studio, but becomes a place where kids can learn about recording arts, can make music, and all of a sudden people on Kickstarter are there. I mean, you may not want to do this. Maybe you hate kids. I don't know, but I think it could be interesting. It could give you a different way with looking at your experience.
Okay. Well, that's a good idea. I have several different instruments here and drums and everything, and I have was thinking about teaching. I have a new fret light guitar. Are you familiar with those?
Yep.
And so it's a good teaching tool as well.
Well,
that would be one of the things that I think is kind of interesting, to look at some of the lead solos and some of the songs and all kinds of pieces on it.
Charlie Mingus did this many years ago. He got this.
Charlie Mingus, right?
Yeah, he got this warehousing space in New York City, and he'd actually applied for nonprofit status, which he got, and he was going to start his own music school in New York City, but because he was just so strung out on heroin, he never did it. And there's actually a movie about this experience. It's a brilliant movie. It was shot by a student filmmaker, and he hangs out with Mingus, and it's one of the most fascinating independent documentaries I've ever seen. Mingus just riffs about women, God, being mixed race. It's an incredible movie. And you get to see this kind of dilapidated music school that he never got off the ground. And then the final scenes of the movie are the police coming in to kick him out of this music school space because he's not making any payments on it. And they go in and they find a hypodermic needle and they arrest him. And I mean, it's all on film. It's all there. It's fascinating. But the concept is kind of the same. Like you apply for a nonprofit status. You put your place in this music school idea and recording studio on Kickstarter, and now all of a sudden, your home is your music studio. It's a music school. You've got people that have funded maybe the first 6 months of your mortgage around this, and all of a sudden you're interacting with your space in a very different and creative way. I'm just throwing it out there.
Hey, well, cool. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling in, Nathan, and good luck with your brother. Okay.
Yeah, he's just, he's actually born the year of the snake with a snake accent. And I think Howard Hughes was a snake, and snakes are mean with money.
Well, they can
be. What year were you born?
I'm a rat. 60.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I like snake people. I've always gotten along with snake people. But what are you?
I'm a rooster, but I have a dragon accent. So
well, snakes steal the hen's eggs. So the roosters
really do, yeah. Well, I think it's been a thing that ever since my first paper route in about 1964 or 5 when I was helping him, I was supposed to get like $30 or $40, and no, he had a mess of missed service paper. They all canceled. I only got like $3 for the whole month, and then I figured, but I learned, and I got my own paper route, and I saved up a mess of money by the time I think I was 14 or 15. I saved up about $2,000 or $3,000.
It's funny the lessons people teach us, sort of, at different angles. So he taught you that. Well, good for him and good for you. I'm going to put you back on hold because I know that you listen.
Okay.
And good luck on that case.
Thanks.
Not sure I'd buy it and send it to him, but figure out some other way. Okay.
I told him last night I didn't want to buy the case if he didn't want to buy the guitar.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm kind of low on. I said I'm low on money. I don't want to buy a case if you don't want to buy the guitar. And then he said he had some financial problems, but I know he's making really good money right now and collecting a pension.
Yeah.
But he just went through a bankruptcy because of his wife passed, and she was on dialysis, and that cost like about $5 million for 5 years or so.
Holy Moses!
So that's not good. But I think it's when your time to go. I think you're just supposed to pass. I think.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you on that. So we need more graceful ways of doing that too.
Hey, well, thanks for being on the radio, and thanks for all the great info.
All right, Nathan. You take good care, brother.
Cool. Bye-bye.
Our friend Nathan in Southern California. Wow, look at all these people that are holding. Lots of holds here. Let's go to how about Cat Bray? Cat Bray 53.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Cat Bray 53. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Where are you calling from?
Maryland.
Maryland, but you sound loud and clear.
Really? On Skype too.
On Skype too. I'll give it a few minutes. You never know with Skype; it could get choppy. But by the way, if anybody is being asked to download the new version of Skype, hold off on that. So that's just one man's opinion. It hasn't been working for friends of mine, which is what and I haven't done it. I haven't downloaded it, and only because, and maybe this is my conspiratorial mindset, but this is the first version of Skype that has been put together, the first upgrade with Skype that's been put together since Microsoft bought Skype. So I'm not sure I really want to upload it. So what's on your plate today, Cat Bray?
I'm feeling very, very restless.
Okay.
Because I want everything to happen now with my new spiritual awakening.
Yes, we know that. We know that experience where you've kind of woken up and you've seen how thoughts manifest quickly as people or experiences or things, and we're living in a time where time is actually collapsing, and so the space between thought and manifestation is also collapsing. I get that. I get the restlessness. What do you want to happen?
I want to be able to be a healer, a medium.
A healer and a medium, and you want it to happen what, now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll give you the opportunity. You ready?
Mhm.
Tell me something about me that I need to know.
Oh gosh. You give good advice.
Wow, you're good.
See?
You're amazing. I think there's a future for you in this.
Thanks. You're kind.
When is your birthday?
December 13th, 1903.
December, here's now Skype is getting glitchy now. December 13th?
Uh-huh.
And what was the year again?
53.
53, okay. Let's go back to that magical time. December 13th, 1953. Before all the chaos and tumult ensued with the 20th century. Before Roswell, I believe before Roswell. Let's see. Go. Okay, so it looks to me here like you have a Pisces moon. Is that right? Yes?
If you say so.
Yeah, because I'm just looking off the solar chart here, and I'm gonna probably have a late Pisces moon, which, by the way, means you are intuitive and mediumistic. So
I've heard that.
Yes, you are. You have Mercury in Sag, Venus in Sag, Mars in Libra. Oh, guess what? You've got Jupiter in Gemini. Hey, how about that? So, well, so Jupiter just went into Gemini Monday. So you're going to have your Jupiter return, but it'll happen in 2013. And Jupiter is the planet of abundance and opportunity, and gifts and all that stuff. And Gemini is all about communication and learning and the sharing of information. It is. It's in its fall in Gemini because it's exalted, or in its own sign in Sagittarius. So people who have Jupiter in Gemini tend to be information junkies. What's interesting about your Jupiter is it doesn't necessarily oppose. Well, it opposes your Sun, so you have a Sun-Jupiter opposition in your chart, which is interesting in that you've got it's the Sag-Gemini axis. And in terms of how you would operate as a medium or a healer is that, like, your operating system is air, to be honest with you. Air, fire. You know, Mercury in Sag, fire. Venus in Sag, fire. Mars in Libra, air. Jupiter in Gemini, air. Sun, Sag, fire. So it's the way that you could access mediumistic or healing tools is that you would have to get really excited and inspired, and you would have to be sort of lit by the flame of inspiration, most of which would theoretically revolve around some form of orthodox religion, or the foundation of orthodoxy as the basis of you being able to tap into mediumistic capacities. Meaning, say, for instance, if you were into the Kabbalah, right, that would be like the foundation of you being able to build on your mediumistic capacities. Like, you could study the Kabbalah, and then you could take off from there and then kind of use your own ability to interface with inspiration. Sagittarius is always about connecting with what I call higher mind, or higher, or quote unquote higher states of consciousness. So for the Sagittarian type who would want to be a medium or a healer, it's really important to stay in touch with sources of inspiration through prayer, through meditation, through walking in nature, through some form of almost formal type, I wouldn't say worship per se, but relationship with the divine. You cannot extricate your ability to be a medium or a healer without having some form of kind of orthodox or structured form or philosophy in your life. Like, you have to build on that with Sagittarius. And then Sagittarius, what Sagittarius does is it uses that as a jumping off point. And then it's out into sort of the free associative mind. You know, Jesus calls it, moving into the upper room, where you interface, between the self and the higher self, or the mind and the higher mind. And that's where Sagittarius really excels. And with all the air in your chart as well, with Mars and with Jupiter, both in air signs, the whole concept of ideas and cross-cultural themes in terms of what I would call mediumship. So one of the things that you may want to do would be to study how indigenous cultures, contact God, because that would be a very Sagittarian kind of thing to do. And maybe there's an indigenous tradition that you would want to follow as a result of that. Maybe it's something like Candomblé, or Umbanda, or, that you can now say, oh, here's some tools that I can work with. They've given me these things where I can get in touch with, theoretically what's outside of myself, so I can help other people. That would be a path that I would, if you want to get into this, that would be a path that I would kind of, move you along with.
Those last two things you mentioned, how do you spell them?
Candomblé is Candomble, and Umbanda is Umbanda. And what they are, it's a syncretic tradition that comes out of Brazil. And the original sort of jumping off point for that is Yoruba, Western African traditions of getting in touch with spirit guides, spirit teachers. And it's really, it's interesting in that they don't really make any distinction between light and dark, good and bad. They've got all these different deities that they allow to come through. When you get into Candomblé and Umbanda, the traditions include the Western saints, Mary, St. George, Jesus, That it also includes sort of the indigenous tribal experience of Brazil. So, it's like channeling Amazonian Indians, as well as, things like, entities like Yemenja, Ocean, so it's an interesting mix. And there's, I'm sure you could find out a lot about it, living in Maryland and being close to D.C. I'm sure you can find what you want to for me personally, I'm not a Santeria person. I'm not a Vodun person, and maybe it's because I was born and raised in in an ecumenical culture. But I find the eclectic sort of mythology of Candomblé and Umbanda to be more interesting for me. That's just for me. It's about going into trances and being able to work with people in spirit trances. That's what it's about.
Okay, because I meditate. I pray to my angels, my guides.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, you may want to look into kind of, what is the Christian mystery tradition around this? Look into mystics like Meister Eckhart or Teresa of Avila. That's a tradition that you come from. And there is a Western mystical tradition that you can tap into that is, even somebody like John Dee, who's really one of the godfathers of Western astrology, he comes from this whole realm of, quote unquote, channeling angels. That changed a little bit when he started to work with Edward Kelly. But you may want to look into people like John Dee. These are if you want to get into that kind of work as a Sagittarius, I think you need those kinds of traditions and that kind of framework to kind of jump off. Before I let you go, you have Saturn in Scorpio. You're about ready to go into your second Saturn return. That happens for you in October. Scorpio, of course, is the planet of death, sex, and transformation, and is about going underneath the surface of things. And Saturn, returning to that in your chart, will indeed initiate you into that journey and going into depth and going into the potential for actually being a conduit and source and inspiration for people. So get ready. It's coming at you. And,
all right.
Saturn trains your moon. Saturn trains your moon, so work with women.
Okay, thank you.
All right?
Uh-huh.
Take good care.
You too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, that's Kat Bray. And then guess what? It's 10:56, and I've only got 4 minutes left in this show. So I may be on the air Friday. I'm not sure. I'm on vacation. I'm going to try not to be. I'm going to play it by ear. Friday's my kids' day at the most magical place in the world. And I'm not talking Disneyland. No, I'm talking Magic Mountain. Get your magical spots straight, boys and girls. So I may or may not be on the air on Friday. Check back on Facebook or check back here on Blog Talk. The only reason I may be on the air is because I might have a guest, a filmmaker on with me. We'll see about that. I'll let you know. I want to thank everybody. If you've been on hold, I'm sorry. I apologize for not being able to get to you. But I will be back on the air next Wednesday. We do this every Wednesday. You can always go to my website, robertphoenix.com. I've got a new post up on Jupiter and Gemini. And if you want to hire me to have me do a full-fledged reading for you, you can do that. I've been very busy lately, so must be doing something right. And you can do that at robertphoenix.com. You can find me on Facebook, Robert Phoenix. You can follow me on Twitter also, Robert Phoenix. I guess I'm that Robert Phoenix. So you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. Again, I want to thank everybody for calling in, and my guest today, William Stickevers. You can find him on Facebook, and his site is williamstickevers.com. And love you all, and I'll see you maybe on Friday, certainly on Monday. Take good care. Adios.
In the name I am that I am, Sanat Kumara, I call forth the light of the living word, beloved Elohim, beloved archangels, beloved mighty Choans of the rays and the lords of karma. I call for the action of beloved Pallas Athena, beloved Goddess of Liberty, beloved Nada, beloved Kuan Yin, beloved Portia, beloved Great Divine Director, beloved All-Seeing Eye of God, Cyclopeia. Let God's will be done, let God's will be done, let God's will be done. I do in the action of the sacred fire in this hour, descend almighty cosmos, secret rays. I am the holding of the balance of Lord Gautama Buddha, beloved Sanat Kumara and the seven holy Kumaras. I call upon the sacred fire, I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved mighty, I am present, come forth in this hour of the victory. Come forth in this hour of the victory of the God flame. I demand the full power of beloved mighty to be with us this night. Beloved Jesus, send to me, Lord mighty, Gautama and Sanat Kumara. Come forth now in the victory of the God flame. Send the light of 10,000 suns. Beloved mighty, stand, mighty, stand, mighty, stand. Around this world now. I call upon the great central sun magnet. I call upon